committee here, and let me thank the committee for coming out and weathering the weather. Public comment on the agenda. Any public comment on the agenda?
Is it me?
Anybody wants to talk about the agenda?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm going to address some of the issues that you were talking
Okay,
about.
right now your comments are just about on the agenda,
Okay,
so it's
okay.
good.
Well, I had a whole little spiel here.
Well, that's later on for call from the.
Okay.
That's the decision.
Oh, they know I'm sorry, but
What's your name?
I'm Patty Thomas. I'm a resident of the neighborhood.
Okay.
Yep, I am a resident. And I came to the village meeting last night, and it was a good meeting. I'm happy. But I think this will further the village. I really do. Like I say, I will be addressing some issues later on in my speech. But I don't know, is there anybody, who do I have to convince? Who do we have to convince? I mean,
You gotta just convince the board and the people on the committee right there.
okay, well, I have issues, I have a story to tell which really opened my eyes for the need for this. And it is medicine. It is medicine, and the benefits from it are enormous and documented. And I think we should still be pro on this, please. Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Public comment on the agenda? Okay, the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been approved and supported. Any comments?
Question on that? Yeah. I would hope that it's not just all or nothing and that, you know,
Did you have something to add to the agenda?
yeah, well, I would hope that the one agenda item is actually would allow us to take votes on particular facilities. There's 5 different facility types. That, and then also if we would like to add some stipulations. I know it's on there as just one agenda item, just for simplicity's sake, I get that. But I think that it is a.
Well, how about under old business 1, we could review?
Review options or something like
Yeah,
that.
review of the information. Okay.
Voting too?
And then C would be the overall, what is the overall recommendation, whatever that combination or.
Okay. Properly moved and supported. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, approval of minutes from the prior meeting.
Motion to approve the meeting minutes from January 11th, 2018. Support.
Properly moved and supported. Any comments?
Well, there's one change. I don't know if you want to capture this, but I think there were some other calls from the floor other than Mr. Drake. I don't know if it matters though.
Not really, but how many slides were there in your presentation?
80, 81.
81.
I'll leave it at
Pretty quick with that.
I heard somebody say 50. I said, well, leave 50 and then I'll ask, but I'll leave it at 50. We'll do
It
that.
says 54.
Okay, that was okay. Okay, those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Those opposed? Communication correspondence workshop, again, not applicable to the committee meeting. Okay. Under old business, let's do a review of the information we received. If someone wants to give us a recap of the 5 businesses proposed.
I guess I'll speak. So you have the facility types are grower. I'll say them first, and I'll specify if we really need to. Grower, processing facility, safety compliance facility, transportation facility, and provisioning center. Grower, where it's grown. Safety compliance facilities where they test it for concentrations and for impurities. Processing facilities where they make it into other such like edibles, oils, things of that nature, not just the raw plant. transportation facility is basically the brings trucks to marijuana. And the provisioning center is the AKA distribution, dispensary. Where it's the point of sale to its customers, end users. Alternative, additionally, can I go on from this facility types? I mean, it's basically, again, the ordinance or ordinances, there's a myriad of different options here. We could lump it all into, we could suggest that we just lump it all into one big ordinance. It could be minimalistic, it could be very detailed. We could do multiple different ordinances. That's what seems to be the majority right now. Most municipalities that are passing it are, doing one ordinance to amend their zoning to specify, many of them are choosing to do a special land use. But they could amend their zoning, and then a separate ordinance would be to actually make it legal within their municipality, to acknowledge the fact that it is legal. So there's advantages to each of those, but we've discussed that before. Also, we can put in, and I hope you guys took the time to look at Lennox Townships. It is redundant upon redundant in terms of them including indemnification, hold harmless clauses, basically saying you're not going to come after us if the feds comes after you. You're doing this on your own. You're not going to sue us, et cetera, et cetera. What else? Zoning restrictions, we could say just industrial, heavy industrial, light industrial. You can even actually, certain municipalities have actually gone further than specified certain geographical locations like latitude, longitude, and whatnot. So that could be taken into account. Minimum distance from schools. We could limit the amounts of facilities. Again, broken down into each type of facility. You want 200 grower facilities, but you only want one holding center, you can write that into the ordinance. One thing that was brought up, we can do an annual town hall event prior to the renewal of the licenses. We can incorporate a point-based system. We could do, or we could just simply say first come, first serve, which I believe is what Lennox does, or we could do a point-based system, or a hybrid of any of those, or a lottery. Things of that nature. So do we want to make a recommendation?
Do you want us to just kind of speak openly, like discuss?
Well, that would be under new business. I thought we would go over recommendations for each facility, the pros and cons. And I know everyone has received emails from Trustee Danny Kirkhoff and myself, and I believe a couple of other people sent some information. And I know you've all done your homework outside of the emails. So why don't we do a round robin, go around the table, just throw some stuff out there and have a discussion on the points. So if you want to start.
Sure. You know, on the purpose of the 5 different types of facilities, personally, I'm at the present time in favor of the 4 of the 5. I feel that the grow facility, less controversial, would be squirreled away in the industrial area, would be kind of out of sight, out of mind. We've had pretty good presentations from various folks as far as plans or ideas that they would like to have regarding a medical marijuana facility in the village. Obviously that doesn't necessarily guarantee that they would be ones that would get a license. But I think that there's been some pretty good presentations made that I feel more comfortable after seeing the presentations with a grow facility, a transportation, with the other 4. I guess the biggest one that I'm still really hung up on is the dispensary. I feel that from a controversial standpoint or from a stigma, that's really what it boils down to, is that there's the stigma, it's the public face of a dispensary. That's really the public, what everybody's really going to see. A grow warehouse isn't necessarily something the public's going to see. But a dispensary, you know, I stirred up quite a debate on Facebook, posting to our local political group, and, you know, there was definitely some vocal, you know, pro and against, you know, as far as dispensaries go. And I really just feel like because of that, you know, we do have Lennox Township, which is already moving forward with all 5 facilities. So it's, while I completely understand it is medicinal, I completely believe in the medicinal properties of it. I firmly believe that it's going to help people that need the help that they need. But with as small of the village as we are, I don't think having somebody go to Lennox Township to get their dispensary is really asking a lot because of the controversial aspect of it. That's at least my opinion at this point. Based off of our previous meetings, it doesn't seem like, especially if we take dispensary out of it, it doesn't seem like we have any concern for additional police force. It doesn't seem like we would have any concerns for increased crime. Seems like they'd be pretty good on lockdown. You know, they've got a product. They know they have a product that's valuable. They're going to take the steps to ensure that it's properly secured. Their personnel are safe. So, you know, from that standpoint, if we take the dispensary out of it, I feel a lot more comfortable with the other 4.
Okay, Kevin?
Well, I kind of feel like the same way anyways. Out of the 5, I am more comfortable with the 4, but my own concern is with the dispensary would be, if it was located, I'd rather have it be located more in the industrial area where they're having the growth facility. You know what I mean? I don't want it at the corner down over here at 27 and Gratiot or whatever. I mean, if we're gonna prove it, I think the stipulation should be, we got the growth facility, transportation facility, you know, the operation over there. Maybe putting in a dispensary over there would be fine. But as far as locating it in another area of New Haven, I wouldn't be comfortable with that.
Okay. Trustee Benjamin?
Just one more time. Yeah, well, I've said where I feel I'm in favor of all 5. I don't have any problem also with locating them all in the industrial area. I think light industrial could go, but I could see the case being made, just pigeonhole them into the heavy industrial. Actually, I do want to make mention that there was, somebody did point out to me that in Lennox Township's ordinance, they apparently also included the mandate that any such facilities need to be connected to the water and sewer. And I think that would be a gigantic plus because, again, as we addressed, much of our heavy industrial does not have access to water and sewer currently. So if we mandated that be the case, such as Lennox did, that would force them to put the infrastructure in place, or otherwise not be able to put their facility up. And that would only then extend the use of other heavy industrial and then even light industrial that borders that land, which otherwise right now is not appealing to other developers because they don't want to be the ones to put the infrastructure in place. But so I see that as being a huge plus for the village. All the other points I've made at prior council meetings. I do think it would be important though if we were to vote on these in the affirmative today, and any of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, or all 5, that we put certain stipulations on our recommendation, because I do think it is important that we have, that we direct legal counsel, which will be what council would ultimately rely on to draft the ordinance, to have the best ordinance possible in place. The last thing, I mean, everybody again knows where I stand, but the last thing I want to see is us end up with yolk on our face. If it's going to be done, it should be done right. So I do think we should, whether we want to do it now or on the next agenda item, whatever, but I do think we should try to nail down. And again, I think maybe we should probably vote on each facility first, and then if we do have a yes on any of them, we should then further probably specify. I mean, if it's no on all of them, then it's no on all of them. There's no need for it. But I do think we should probably specify if there's any majority votes, majority of facilities that get votes in the numbers, that we probably should specify what kind of, or what we want, what we're looking for in the ordinance if and when it gets drafted.
Yeah.
Okay, I mainly for the 4 facilities. I kind of toggle on the fence with the dispensary just because of Lennox. It is just right up the road. And with it being right up the road, is it necessary to have one here in our village? The reason why I'm on the fence is because right now they're coming to us. What's gonna happen 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and we're gonna now wanna go to them, and we're late for the party. So I just don't want any regressions there saying, well, we kind of sent everybody to Lennox.
That's why you want all 5.
I've given my reasons why I'm toggling back and forth. And one thing that always sticks out in my mind with this is, because there's pros and cons to everything, and I know, Ann, you brought up with, you feel that there's gonna be extra patrol, police patrol having to be needed and stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't sure on that.
Yeah.
That's why I said that we
No,
didn't-
I'm just saying, one thing that I always feel that kind of comes up to me is the jobs that are going to be created coming to New Haven and the people that are going to be coming to our village. And right now, we don't have things like Aldi's and Starbucks because we don't have the traffic or the curb appeal. So if we're getting more traffic and we're getting more workers coming here who are going to want to get lunches here at our Carter's Cantina or at our Coney Island that for some reason is never open. We're gonna want curb, this is gonna bring curb appeal and more money to our village. And it's gonna want the people of the village to wanting to, make it look more of a curb appeal for places maybe like a grocery store or a coffee shop, or bring more people in to say, hey, there's workers that need, what's that empty cafe that's downtown? Let's open that back up. So this is what I think of, and that's what sticks in my mind of, let's bring these 30 to 75 people, workers coming in on a 5 to 7 day basis. So, I'm pretty much for the 4. Because of Lennox having the dispensary, I'm a little bit on the fence on the dispensary.
Andy?
I'm going to ask you to indulge me for about 82 slides. No, I punched up some slides just to go through, so I will ask you to kind of bear with me and be patient. So I just wanted to acknowledge there's been a lot of presentations and discussion brought to the committee, so I think we all appreciate the viewpoints shared. We've had residents, business owners, potential licensees, and their partners and representatives. And like the others on the committee, I've also done quite a bit of my own research. So things like reading and understanding the state of Michigan LARA guidelines, articles about medical marijuana and community impact in Michigan, and those focused on other states where it's already legal for either medicinal or recreational purposes, attendance at forums and discussions in other communities, discussions with several local realtors and residents. So I've been pretty consistent in my viewpoint. I've said it several times over the past few months. The issue has nothing to do with the medical benefits of marijuana. It also has nothing to do whether or not we support the rights of people to use or procure medical marijuana. And I don't think we're really debating any of that, and I think the committee's being pretty respectful of that too, because this issue centers around whether or not the community would benefit from having any types of facilities, and if so, which of the 5 types. So in my opinion, and I think this is fairly obvious, I think the community would benefit financially from any of the 5 types of facilities. I still remain absolutely and unwaveringly opposed to dispensaries in the community. I've been very consistent on that from the start. I've maintained an open mind, and honestly, I even stood pretty impressed on the possible renderings that were shown to us of what a facility would look like. But my opinion still remains that a retail facility or a retail type facility acting as retail would carry negative factors that far outweigh potential financial benefits we would receive. So then that leaves us with the other 4 types of facilities. Grower operations, in my opinion, are the next most controversial type of facility. I do have to caveat that my opinion on the gap in the controversy between a grow op and a dispensary is a significant chasm, but there's only 4 remaining, so one had to be second on the list. Laura has provided in their guidelines that licenses for grow operations could be stacked, meaning multiple licenses could be combined within the same facility. It makes the most economic sense for a company to do that, and as we have heard, companies proposing to build in the village would desire to initially stack up to 3 Class C licenses. So as a reminder, that allows growers to grow up to 1,500 plants at a time, each Class C license. I've noted that there's been some articles written about residential home values, specifically within a certain proximity to a grow operation or a grow house. In January, we were provided data from a specific Realtor.com article to show, among other points, property values were not negatively impacted by marijuana facilities in Colorado. I read the article, I went back to the article, the source, and also found an interesting breakdown they made that while overall home value in the state was not generally negatively impacted, they cited a specific type of operation that did have a negative impact on values. The article showed that home values specifically within a half mile of a grow operation or grow house had a value 8.4% lower than comparable values further away from a grow operation. I will say it's possible that a grow operation in an industrialized zoned area would not realize the same impact as that found in the study. But in a village that's only a couple of square miles, the potential negative impact of a half-mile radius touches way too many residential properties for me to ignore. So for those reasons, I can't support a grow operation either. If we're going to take the generalities that residential property values are not negatively impacted, I think we need to consider the specifics within this with the same veracity. Processing operations, secure transporting operations, safety compliance laboratories. We know what I mean by that. Might not be the exact terminology, but I think those are all 3 in a different category altogether. No person with a medical marijuana card can purchase product from any of these 3 types of facilities, meaning there's no retail component to them. I didn't specify it for grow operation, but that's true for grow operation too. Because of that, there's no advertising or outreach to the medical marijuana card holders of the state. These 3 facilities, in my opinion, represent the lowest possible number of negative factors for the village. I would even venture far enough to say that the negative impact of these 3 types of facilities is negligible. With that said, based on what we've been presented with and zoning areas where these facilities would be allowed, I have very little confidence that a company would choose to place one of those facilities within the village if they were allowed, if those were the only facilities that were allowed. There's very little reason to believe that a company or developer would choose to forego the efficiency of other communities offering the possibility of having all 5 license types in a condensed area to send product to facilities away from those areas for processing or testing. However, again, if that choice was made by a company or developer, the negative impact to the village would be negligible in my opinion. Therefore, on the surface, I would not object to a processing operation, secure transporter, or safety compliance laboratory, but I think council needs to make the choice if allowing these facilities is worth the benefit the village would receive. Community. There was an original council proposal to put this issue to a ballot. I don't believe the village should bear the burden of using a ballot initiative as a tool to survey residents. I'm also not aware of any community taking this course of action except the city of Detroit, where the result has been met with legal challenges, similar process. In November, I asked supporters of opening medical marijuana facilities in the village why they weren't organizing an effort to prove that there was no significant opposition to opening a facility in the village. In that meeting, audience members, including representatives and supporters, noted they could easily obtain 250 signatures. At this point, I'm unaware of those signatures being brought forward. They were not brought forward in January, and Chair Pridemore, I don't know if they've been provided to you. I don't know why the action wasn't taken, especially after it was promised, but I'm not going to question or conclude with opinion, but just to note that that info was not provided. So I do believe residents of the village support the right of people to legally use medical marijuana. Again, that's not the point. I've spoken with many different people in the village about this issue since October. Most of them said they support the legality of medical marijuana, but most of them also said they do not want medical marijuana facilities allowed in the village. I will just give one point here on, well, there's one slide on medical marijuana card holders. So just from card holder statistics, they're presented at the state and county demographic. Macomb County has approximately 868,000 residents. There are approximately 19,500 medical marijuana card holders in the county. So there are approximately 2.2% of all Macomb County residents that have a medical marijuana card. For comparison purposes, there are approximately 24,400 card holders in Oakland County, which is approximately 1.9% of that county's population, approximately 3,200 in St. Clair County, which is about 2% of their population, and approximately 2,500 in Lapeer County, which is about 2.8% of their population. There are approximately 4,700 New Haven residents. Applying the same percentage as the county, there are only about 100 medical marijuana card holders in the village. The number and percent of card holders, in my opinion, don't show that there's an excessive demand in or around our local community, and I wonder who we're trying to serve when we talk about meeting the demands of the 2%. So then, summary, I'll do kind of the last slide here. This information was a small part of the information presented to us. Based on all of the information that's been provided, I recommend that we do not allow any medical marijuana facilities in the village of New Haven. In my opinion, the only viable facilities within the village are processors, secure transporters, or safety compliance laboratories, and the benefits of those facilities to the village as presented would be minimal. So I'm going to break this out into two parts. So that's part one. If the majority of the committee and/or council decide to opt in, I would recommend that they only do so as follows to protect the village. Dispensary, do not allow. Grow operation, do not allow. Processing operation, allow. Secure transporter, allow. Safety compliance laboratory, allow. So, and then my last point I'll make is I think council should take whatever recommendation this committee makes and decide to act on it. I don't believe council should defer action to a ballot initiative.
I just have one question about your data about the housing values. And I'm not debating them with you at all. I just have, I guess, a comment on them. What was it, a half a mile? Housing values within a half a mile of a facility, was that within a grow facility, you said?
It was in the Realtor.com article, it was called a grow house. So I wanted to caveat that by saying there may be a difference in impact on values between what is deemed as a grow house, which would be, from my research, that would generally be considered a home in a residential area that was converted into a growing operation, as opposed to a grow operation in a industrial zoned area.
When you read it, the only thing I was thinking was, I don't have a list, and I don't believe that I've seen a list of where all these grow houses and grow operations are. But I would guess because the talk that we're having and other people are having, they're in light and heavy industrial areas, whereas the housing values are pretty low anyways, or lower anyways than standard, Syrian housing zones or residential zones. So as much as I'd like to sit here and say I think they're going to drop home values, I think that statistic is not well supported. I just think it's a skewed statistic in my mind. That's not to say that I necessarily support all of this. My one biggest thought, and the whole thing back and forth since the first meeting, and I've gone back and forth in my own head and outspoken viewpoints of my own. If we're looking at a plastics or metal manufacturing or any other type of manufacturing facility, there's no issue. The real issue is public view. It's what do people feel about this, and is it going to impact our village in a negative way? We've listed plenty of different positives that could potentially come from this, whether it be, having those industrial zones built up, having the infrastructure paid for to further their building down the road. That's a potential positive. Having people that are employees there staying here and looking for a place to eat, or a quick shop at the store. They go to the corner store if they go home to grab a gallon of milk or whatever. Those are potential positives, obviously. Are those positives bigger than the negative viewpoint of a few to maybe many people in the village? That's what I struggle with. I don't know that. I mean, there's no way to know that. with your numbers as far as the possibility of how many card holders are in the village, I would venture to guess that all those positives are going to outweigh those 100 potential card holders' viewpoints, or the other people that are our friends and neighbors that have a negative view of medical marijuana and the facilities itself and what it could potentially do to our village. I agree with you. I don't think the argument is whether or not it's a medicine and whether it's beneficial. We know it is. A lot of us know it is. Hopefully all of us know it is, but that's not the issue here. So since we're going around and saying whether or not we support, I do like your idea of, I like your notion that if only 3 had ordinances drafted, I do agree with you. I would think it would be very difficult to find companies that would come in and say, well, we'll put these operations in here, we'll set up shop and do this, and we'll be happy to transport our plants from somewhere far away to bring them here to be processed. That doesn't make any sense to me when they can go up the road or to whatever town they're working at and have it all done on site. That being said, coming into tonight's meeting, I was at the viewpoint, really, I don't care, to be honest. To be perfectly honest, I don't care. I don't, I've listened to both sides of this. The financial impact, the positive revenue coming into our village is not that big. You know, yes, it's more than we're getting right now. That's great. I would love to have more money in my bank account than I have right now, even if it's $10. But there's so many people that are local, that are supporting a lot of other programs here, whether it be in the schools, or whether it be in the village, or whether it be the Lions Club, that are against this. I don't think that little bit of money supports, it makes it worthwhile. I do like the idea of maybe the infrastructure and maybe bringing businesses in, but there's other businesses that can do that for us too. They just haven't knocked on our door yet. So going forward, I guess I would agree with you in that those 3 would be beneficial, the processing, the transport, and the safety, but that's only having, if I had to pick, a certain number. Otherwise, I would say it's not worth it. I wouldn't support any of them. I don't think it's that beneficial. I don't think it's beneficial enough to our village to go through all of that for, $100,000 a year. I don't think it's worth all of that extra. So I'm gonna say no, I don't support them.
Okay, as you are all probably painfully aware, I oppose all 4 initiatives. I have to admit, all 5, yeah, well, no.
You have one?
Yeah, I have one, no, I do oppose all 5 initiatives, but the presentations that were made, the pictures that the company showed us, one company showed us, did kind of change my perspective on the facilities that were being offered. It was kind of an eye-opener, and the more I dug into it, I realized that there are facilities opening up in Arizona, Colorado, where California now, they've got, of course, it's a big boom now. These aren't the backdoor deals and the guy with the coat open going, hey, want a fatty? But, is that the terminology, fatty? Okay.
She's asking you.
Asking you. But I've also reached out to virtually every corner of this community. I've talked to people in Amherst, in Pembroke, in Decorah, in the Heights, in the older part of the village off Main Street. And very few want marijuana here, very few. They have, especially in the older part of the village, they've cited the history of the village. One resident told me, this community can't catch a break. It went from mishandling by prior administrations, and a lot of us are aware of the history, that went on in New Haven, to the infamous landfill, and now to a marijuana issue. I've done my homework as far as litigation that is currently, it's in the courts. City of Detroit just won a court case. As you know, Detroit shut down about half their dispensaries. The operators got together, filed a suit against the city of Detroit, challenging their right to zone. What they're saying is, we want dispensaries every 500 feet. Now, of course, we know that's not going to happen here. The bigger issue is here, that this industry, unlike any other industry that comes to a community, is costing communities money in litigation, challenging their right to determine zoning in their community. City of Wyoming faced a challenge. The city of Detroit won. It's now being referred to a higher court. It's being appealed to a higher court. Then we have the issue of the stigma attached to it. As I sent you information, 98% of the communities in the state of Michigan are taking a wait and see. Because this industry is in its infancy, there's a lot of stumbling blocks, the regulations, the rules coming down, the court cases coming down. It's a shifting sand of an industry. If we had a plastics firm coming here, we wouldn't be having committee meetings about it. We've got a new dental office that opened up on 27 Mile. Nobody said anything. We got a new cake business opening up on Main Street. Nobody's saying anything. This is such a hot button topic. It's demanding that people, committee meetings, they're being challenged, they're being threatened over it. I'm not saying that I'm 100% against marijuana. I am not, I believe people do have a medical need for marijuana. We have I believe three caregivers in New Haven that will effectively be put out of business if we allow dispensaries. So there's an impact to our neighbors who have businesses that is that's their support. They'll be put out of business. In November, I sent you guys information on the citizens group to regulate marijuana like alcohol. And I hope some of you went and read the initiative language. There is zero language about any regulation in that initiative. It will be on the November ballot. And the opinion that I forwarded you that was presented to the Clinton Township Board was, if the community decided they don't want any of these businesses in their town, the only way they can stop it is through a voter initiative. Again, we have an industry that is demanding committee meetings, challenges, arguments, different laws coming through. Now we've got legislation popping up in November. This is not the type of industry or community our size right now at this point should dip their toe into. There's just too many uncertainties. Now we talk about zoning. These types of facilities go into industrial. Well, we've got two different types of industrial. You've got some right off of on Victoria Street, right by Clark Street. Pembroke is here, Amherst is here, Clearview's going to start building here. That could potentially become a marijuana site. Then we have heavy industrial down here off Roselle Street. Somehow we seem to forget about the people living on Rogan Street on the Lennox Township side, and the people that do live on Roselle Street. And why it would be easy to say, well, they're next to that scrapyard that I'm pretty sure is violating a lot of DEQ ordinances. Those homes are worth gold to the residents down there. And pointing at them and saying, well, you know, you're over by the scrapyard, too bad, here's some marijuana, I don't think it's conscionable. So I'm against all five because of pending legislation, because of the stigma attached to it, because of the people living down there, because of our neighbors that are caregivers, because Lennox Township, who I believe has not had one application yet, is going to pass 15 different permits, 3 of each type. I just have to say no. I've done outreach, I've talked to residents, very few are in favor. This is for 2% of the, 2%?
2.2.
2.2, and the facility's going to be right up there. So, that's my 2 cents.
And I just want to jump in really quick with something short. I would love to see, and I'm sorry, ma'am, I forgot your name. Patty. Obviously, you're in support of this, and you know that you agree that there's a use for it and things like that. I wonder if other people that feel like you do let's say the village went through this and did everything except for a dispensary, how does that benefit you and the people with that similar outlook?
I'm gonna break it all down for you.
You know what I mean?
Even
If you-
regulatory things that she's concerned about.
Because if it's not a dispensary, then no public has access. It doesn't benefit the people that need that medicine, that need that medical marijuana. So it's really just another industry in our village. It's not open to the public. You're not going to walk in and buy, steel molds or whatever they build at a steel factory. You're not buying that stuff. So it doesn't benefit the public. It benefits the public in a different way with taxes and things like that. And I want to clear up a little bit, just briefly, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, listening to you, saying that I don't care. My reasoning for saying that is, we've gone back and forth and listened to both sides, very, very well worded arguments, listened to some very fine points on both sides of it. But my thing is to me personally, other than possibly, the potential of my property value going down, or losing my friends and neighbors if they decide to up and move because of this, or the fact that, maybe it comes in and it's just the whole thing falls apart and New Haven dives like it did when the foundry closed. It doesn't truly affect me. I don't use medical marijuana. I don't need medical marijuana. I'm not benefiting from that industry. It's out of sight, out of mind to me. But I don't flip the other way because I don't think it benefits the village that much. There's the potential, but there's potential, it's a guessing game. And that's what we've went back and forth of, what could happen. So to me, that's why I say I don't care, because if it passes and we make the motion and say, let's go to the village and say, yes, do this, okay, well, we do it, and maybe we see some benefit, maybe we don't. And if we go to the council and say, don't do this, it doesn't hurt me either, because that's where we are. So that's why I say I don't care. Reading through all of it, yeah, there's a lot of stuff I can agree with on both sides. I don't know, I hate to be part of something that's sort of voting on it and say it doesn't matter, but it kind of doesn't to me. And it looks like they have enough support to outvote me anyways if there's a vote, so.
Okay, since we're.
Yeah, it's around.
No, I only briefly at the end here started taking notes, because I didn't realize this was I didn't realize there would be a need to rebut anything, but there were many things said that I think were, taken out of context, twisted perspectives, and then outright wrong. I'm not gonna sit and debate them point by point, but much of what was said was, to the negative, was wrong, and was actually addressed in the 81 point slide. I mean, everybody rolls their eyes and laughs, okay, you overkill and stuff like that. I understand, I'm anything but brief, and a lot of times, it's better presented if it's shortened to the point, but at the same time, I spent months making that, and to have misstatements made here in the last waning minutes before we decide.
What did I say that was wrong?
I didn't say that. I'm not going to get into a debate. That's not what the structure
No, but
is.
this is the round table, and
Right,
there is
understood.
debate.
And like I said, I didn't expect it was going to be so much that I would have to even do this. I was going to let a couple things go. I'm happy to see that Mr. Alistair Holm did rebut one particular point, and I was going to hit on that, was the home values. Again, if they're largely, most of the communities have said, well, fine, do it in the industrial area. Of course, surrounding homes within a half mile in an industrial area are going to have lower home values than the other ones in that community. That's an absolute
Do
given.
we know that?
I would be surprised if it was the opposite.
No, it's an assumption, I would guess, but,
We should have checked on the values on Rogan Street.
This is relatively common sense.
Huh?
But and then
But I don't think
you're
that's what the
talking-
article said. I think the
Well, it
article
is, I
said.
have it right here.
I think the article said
Surrounding
that-
homes within half a mile of the marijuana business often have lower property values than homes in the same county that are farther out. And again, then it has an illustration for grow house, for medical dispensaries, recreational shops, all within half mile. Again, given, okay, understood. But again, you have to understand that these communities are generally not saying willy-nilly, okay, go ahead and put it anywhere and everywhere, and you're not having pot shops open up, right next to $1 million homes. It's just not happening. They're saying, okay, fine, you're gonna do it, fine, do it in an industrial area, or other undesirable locations. That's how it happens. So, of course, they're gonna have lower home values. And it's a chicken versus, what came first, the chicken or the egg? With these homes were probably already lower value to begin with, and that's why they were okay with low.
I think that's the point you're missing, though. I think the article does not say the homes are lower value. It says since those businesses have gone in,
No,
they're lower value.
no, I have it pulled up.
Okay.
But in any case, and we're talking about all these negative effects and all it's gonna have all these negative effects. Again, I provided firsthand, this a few days ago, but I mean, the one was actually provided months ago. You had Harrison Township Supervisor, he had a personal thing, and I gave you guys his phone number and email. He welcomed anybody to reach out. Of course, I didn't even want to, he didn't want to put paper pencil. I understand that. You can't blame an elected official for not wanting to, stick their neck out and all that. But he did, I did summarize for you guys point by point the discussion that I had with him, and I provided his phone number, his email, and I invited you guys to reach out to him. In the last week or so, I gave you guys, testimonial from an elected official in Ypsilanti, again, saying that nothing but good things about it, that people come in, they spend money in the area, they go get a bite to eat, and then leave. It hasn't increased crime. All it is another storefront that's actually filled instead of vacant. Positive things. But and again, if I would have known that this was going to be a point to, a stump speech agenda item, I definitely would have had another 83 slide presentation ready to go. But that's not what I expected. So again, I think there's a lot of disingenuous stuff, or unintentional, and I'm not going to go point by point, but a couple different things. Ms. Pridemar, you did say that the majority, and you said that as a matter of fact, but that's not a matter of fact. The only way we could know that is if we took a poll, or if we
I
did
said
put it on a ballot.
the majority of people I talked to, and that is a
Okay,
fact.
yeah, no, but you said that sentence separate from then the fact that you followed it.
Let me
And
clarify,
majority-
the majority of the people that I spoke to.
Understood. And I've had the opposite experience, and that doesn't surprise me, because people know where you stand, and so the ones that are in agreement with you are gonna gravitate toward you. I've had the opposite effect. So, and that doesn't surprise
So
me.
it cancels
You're presenting it as though, it's, whether implied or otherwise, you're presenting it as though absolutely people are against it. That's not the case. In fact, again, in my
Let's agree that's your
83
interpretation. Next
in my
point.
83-page slide, what is fact is that, well-respected polling things of a whole nation overall that surveyed thousands and thousands of people, different surveys, they provided 3 different ones, came, one said, and this is the Gallup poll, in 2017 Gallup poll, 64% of Americans support it. 2017 Quinnipiac poll, 94%.
But we're not debating whether or not they support medical marijuana.
The stigma that's associated with it, and I get that. But again, you're talking about all these other factors that would come into play. And again, throughout that whole slide, I had, if you wanted to debate this stuff, I wish between last month when I did present this and today, this would have been addressed. You could have emailed me, or you could have, raised these questions or concerns prior to today, and then just dumping it on right before we take a vote. Because again, in those 83 boring slides, I get that, but there were well-researched, and I didn't just quote High Times magazine and stuff like that, but I provided, professional journals on this matter in a whole variety of different ones. Professional journals, well-known, well-respected, surveys and all that stuff, all the statistics and everything from the FBI and whatnot. These things that you're, again, stating, or, we can assume, or we think, or this still might be a concern. These have been addressed, and I think it's disingenuous to still just reassert them right here at the end, even though they've been addressed.
Okay, you do understand that things must be discussed at an open meeting.
No, they do, they do, but they don't. But not as much as you're implying.
No.
2 people, if
We
he's
have
concerned about
discussed
something I
this at
said, he
an
can
open
reach
meeting.
out to me. He can reach out to me, short of coming to an open a meeting. And you're trying to insinuate otherwise, and you have done that all along, and I think that has stifled open communication, unfortunately. But in any case, you stated stuff about the November ballot, and I think those are grossly inaccurate, at least my understanding of it.
What's inaccurate about it?
Can you say who you're addressing as
Right.
inaccurate?
Yeah,
Thank you.
trust me. What was inaccurate about the legislation?
The lawsuits, you
No,
raised
let's
the
go back to
lawsuits.
the legislation.
I'm
You
not
said it's
this is not a
inaccurate.
debate right now. This
You
is not
said
a
it was
debate.
inaccurate. Justify that
I
statement.
said as I perceive.
No, you said it was inaccurate. You said it was inaccurate. What was inaccurate about it? Enlighten me. What was inaccurate about it?
No, I'm not gonna do this. This is not what we're
No, you
this
said
is not
it.
the
Okay,
school.
I'm
This
just
is not
gonna
the
say
format.
that
That's not, just,
this was her opinion. We did have,
in my opinion, right.
we each had, we went around, we gave our opinion.
Right.
And we did. and you gave your summary, and you had your PowerPoint, and you gave your thought, and that you don't care, and you gave your thought too, and that's what we went around and did, so,
If I could-
I say we go to the next.
Before we do,
The
you know,
lawsuit's
I do want to
completely
bring up,
false.
though, you know, one of the things that I have struggled with this whole decision has always been, you know, neighbors and public perception and all that. And, you know, to Mr. Rossick and Mr. Osterholm's point, Mrs. Pridemore's point, you know, we had the Facebook debate about medical marijuana. I was actually unfriended by one of my friends over the debate because they were so upset with my stance over medical marijuana. So, you know, while that's not going to be something that totally can make or break a decision, you know, it is something that has to be kept in mind too, is that public perception. You know,
That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's really the whole thing. The whole argument is about public perception.
And I guess I kind of go back to, you know, me personally, I said my piece. I'm in favor of the 4. But do we really need the medical marijuana facilities here in New Haven? We have it in Lennox Township. Do we really need to do this?
Well, there would be the additional revenue,
Right.
which is an extra, I think it's 3% on our current,
3% of 25% of,
3% of our
This is
current
annually too.
budget, I
yeah,
think.
annually.
It worked out to, per $1 million facility, I think an extra $17,500. If someone came up and said, well, we're gonna build a $4 million facility, just going on the figures from the last, it'd be an extra $17,000, and then it would be,
I thought they said there's $75,000, $80,000 a year.
It's $140,000.
it's 140 for all 5. If you eliminate one
If you
of them, it
only
would
have
drop it down.
Every time you cut one,
Right.
you cut about 20% off of what. you
Yeah.
paid.
And then you divide that by what's.
And no offense to you, but last I checked, 140 is a lot more than 2.
Yeah.
I didn't disagree with you. That's what I said. I said, yeah, it's some money, but it's not,
We've been here.
it's
for
not
50
overwhelming, is what
We've
I'm
been,
saying.
it's now, for this community,
It's huge.
Okay.
It's
huge.
It'll help us out.
we've
It'll
been,
help us
we've
go
been
and
proud.
Okay, wait, time out. We're not doing a sales pitch right now.
Are you taking stuff from the
No, time out. You've got to slow the meeting back.
But all you've done is do the opposite.
Not from the floor.
I know, okay.
Okay, let me.
You said you weren't
make
gonna
this
debate, and that's all you're
Let
doing
me,
too.
well, right, because I didn't expect it, otherwise I would have presented a lot more.
Okay, we'll do that from the
Let me ask this, I think it was
floor.
disingenuously presented how, I forgot your name, I apologize. You kind of brushed it off. I would like to hear what she has to say, because quite honestly, what is the point of having her talk after we've already made a decision? I don't think it's gonna change anybody's
Well,
opinion.
should we
I really
move call from the floor ahead?
Yes, I do agree. We should.
Okay, we have a motion,
Motion move, call to the floor ahead of the decision.
I
Support?
second support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so let's do that right now. Call from the floor. Would you like to come up, Pam?
Patty.
Patty. I keep
Thank
calling
you, I'm biting my tongue over there.
I keep calling you Pam. I don't know why.
Patty Thomas is the name. You're in the legal department of this, I understand that, I'm gonna break it down to street level for you, okay? I am Patty Thomas, I'm a medical marijuana patient, I have been a pothead, a stoner, whatever, since I was 15 years old. I'm 62, that's 47 years, okay? I've seen it. It was once a get high. Now they have tweaked it and developed it, and it's a medicine. It's my medicine. Who'd have thunk? Seizures, Alzheimer's, tumors, PTSD, MS. I just read something today about spinal cord injuries. It's amazing. They're developing all sorts of things. By who? There's been decades-long wars on this, and still people are researching, testing, and developing cannabis, while they're telling us that Big Pharma is killing us. I heard this 30 years ago, and they were right. We're in the middle of an opioid epidemic right now. And Big Pharma and our government is to blame. The politicians, it's so deep into their pocket that they were allowed to write their own rules and regulations. And they have admitted it. They have admitted it, that they got to write them. Macomb County seems to be an epicenter of this crisis. We have opioid zombies walking around in a daze. We have heroin corpses actually dying in the streets and being brought back to life at an alarming rate with no end in sight. Cannabis is an alternative. Delta One coming here is perfect timing. Call it fate, kismet, chance, destiny, serendipitous, whatever. This project is a golden green opportunity, and I'm pretty sure most of the residents are progressive enough to realize the potential. The compound will be great for the area. It will meet jobs and extra taxes for the village. I would like to ask that a certain percentage or number of people that live in the village would be included in their employment. As for the dispensary, basic logic and common sense. Where does the money come that drives the market? It comes from the streets. It always has. For the last 50 years, it's been there. They fought it, they fought it, they fought it, and we're legalizing it. It makes no fiscal sense to cut us out of that revenue. The compound is nice, but this is legit, people. This is medicinal, and it will soon be legalized. Other states have legalized it, other countries have legalized it. We no longer want to be relegated to driving miles for our meds. Keep the money in our community. This is medicinal, and it's not going away. For the people who want to wait and see, what are we waiting for and what are we going to see? Are we going to wait and see what the government will do, allow us to do? Well, it's still a Schedule 1. They have a patent on an artificial marijuana, and yet states are legalizing it. How does that happen? Are we going to wait and see what Big Pharma does to it? Are we going to wait and see how they can genetically modify it and tell us that it's good for us and that that's what we need? Like they haven't done enough damage to generations of Americans with our government's approval. Cannabis is an entity. Definition, a thing with distinct and independent existence. Nobody owns it, nobody controls it. Cannabis is a commodity. Definition, a raw material or primary agricultural product that can be bought or sold, or a useful or valuable thing such as water or time. Cannabis is a commodity with virtually no governmental or corporate ties. Think about that. What's she talking about? Cannabis is a commodity with virtually no governmental or corporate ties. Well, no, the feds, you can't have it, this, that. They waged the war. They've sucked up all of our tax dollars, made other countries rich, and it's still a Schedule 1, yet we're on the verge of legalizing it. Corporations aren't involved in it. Big Pharma would love to get a hold of it, but haven't been able to touch it. And yet somewhere, some people have been developing cannabis. No one is fighting over it. No one is being greedy. They're just working for a better world. Nobody owns it. Nobody controls it. The feds can tax it and they can put the regulations on it that they want. But if they get too heavy-handed, one of two things will happen. It will go back underground where it survives quite well, or there will be a revolution. My money's on a revolution. I was content to sit on the sideline. I have my card, I have a caregiver, I'm good. But between the first meeting that I came to and the one with Mr. Henke and Delta One, I witnessed an incident at my workplace and I can no longer sit idly by and do nothing. I cannot sit and watch Big Pharma destroy another generation. It must be said, it must be heard, it must be understood. I work for a middle school in the kitchen. I could possibly now lose my job for being here and speaking up. But that is a fear I have lived with all of my life. All of my working life. I've always feared, if they find out, what's going to happen. And in the meantime, I would watch fellow employees walking in hungover, still drunk, and just going about their business. At this stage of my game, I really don't care, but I can no longer be silent. And if you know me, you know if I have something to say, I will say it. A lunch mom brought a girl to the kitchen in search of food. We asked her what she wanted, and she couldn't answer us. Her eyes were rolling back in her head. She was incoherent. Her head was rolling around and she was swaying as she was standing there. Bottom line, she was blotto, she was over-medicated, she was wasted. I've seen it in adults many times, but never in a child. She couldn't even carry her tray. It was heart-wrenching to see. And as she was led away, shuffling her feet, oblivious of her surroundings, I realized she was part of another generation of opioid zombies being poisoned with mind-altering drugs at middle school level and would probably be on them for the rest of their life. They're all alternatives. Cannabis is one of them. Do the research. They have got this down to where that CBDs, you could give them a little gummy in the morning of a indica or a sativa, and they could get through the day with no after effects. It's documented. This isn't a bunch of hippies trying to sell a bag. This is legit. As a parent, you owe it to your child to research it. This is the third generation being destroyed by this epidemic. It must stop. I said it, you heard it, do you understand? This is unprecedented. This is uncharted territory for the village. It's scary, and I understand that. But having been around it as long as I have seen nothing but good come out of it. Delta One not only sees the potential, they know the potential. This is not their first rodeo. They are breaking ground in a new industry.
And we're not going to do a sales pitch for Delta One.
Okay. There will be a learning curve. The majority of the risk is theirs, not ours, but I believe we will benefit not just monetarily, but in the quality of our life. The naysayers may poo-poo that, but it has been proven over the last 50 years that cannabis is a good thing. I came away from the last meeting absolutely giddy, thinking that my village could possibly be a part of this awesome opportunity. Never in my lifetime did I think legalization would be a possibility. I love the thought of being a trailblazer in the cannabis industry in Michigan. This can only be a win-win situation for the village. I really don't see why there is any hesitation. I think we will be seeing only good things coming out of this project. I would like to thank, applaud, and give a big old wet sloppy kiss to Daniel for having the foresight, for having the balls, and for having the intestinal fortitude to do the research and see this thing through, and for taking all the crap and accusations that have been thrown at him. Again, with the image of that little girl shuffling off into oblivion, please, please, please revisit and reconsider the dispensary. This is too much legitimate money to be had. Why turn it away? Our children's future can be changed. In closing, she's almost done. It's hard for me to believe that in a country that allows gender changes on a whim, that allows Hollywood and recording companies to produce movies and songs with graphic violence, that allows companies to create games in which children can kill things and people, that allows paid professional players to take a knee on the field during my national anthem could condemn a plan. I find it hard to believe that with the natural, organic, holistic movement, why would you not turn to the sweet leaf to embrace it and use it for good, as it was intended? I firmly believe that New Haven can become a green phoenix, rising up from the ashes of the foundry and the dumps and into prosperity. Thanks for listening.
Okay, call.
Okay, discuss.
Discuss, thank you.
I think that gentleman wanted to speak, and since I was the last one to arrive, I'm more than happy to let him go.
I'll be a little more brief than Ms. Patty.
Sorry. I had a lot to say.
My name is Kyle Kaplan. So, Patty's speech was very, very moving, and I can't disagree with the empathy towards marijuana patients. I feel for them, and I think it's great that people found solutions. I have some friends that have PTSD that have normally been almost cured from tons of side effects from it. And it's definitely had some medical benefits. But again, There's nothing to do with that whatsoever. Whether or not New Haven allows medical marijuana businesses in our little community or 2 square miles has nothing to do with blazing the trail for, the legalization of it for recreational uses or anything like that. It's suggesting that having a dispensary that stop the opioid overdoses totally takes away the whole notion of being medical. Because that is not medical if you're taking away people who are doing heroin. It's recreational at that point. But anyway, don't need to digress here. So we talked about the benefits to the village in terms of financial benefits, and really that's the only thing that we can benefit is financially. And the bigger thing that's been carrying this village out in the past 2 years has been homes being built. I've got 8 basements around here now being done. We just sold vacant land to another builder. We're on a great course for huge residential development. And anything we do or change in what we're doing today can risk changing that. That's guaranteed right now. We've got houses being built. We're guaranteed they're going to continue being built. And we can't guarantee that that's going to continue if we change what we're doing. If we keep on our course, keep holding steady, there's a pretty good chance that we can guarantee that the development's still going to keep going. But it's all about risk. Any business is about risk. There's risk and reward involved. We're taking a risk not doing it. We're taking a risk if we do it. So we've got to analyze the risks and benefits to all of the aspects. Is it, a lot of people said to me, is it really worth it? Are we sure it's worth it? Is it, what are we going to lose if we don't do it? Is development got to stop? Are they going to stop building houses? Is no one ever going to build another business in this town? I don't think so. I think we're going to keep going on course. Business as usual, things are being great. The state of the village last night was phenomenal. It's the best one we've had in 10 years. We're going to lower our taxes. We're going to lower our water bills. They've got tons of money for streets and roads to be improved. Do we need the extra $140,000 or whatever? Is it really worth it? I just don't think it is. We talk about perception. And really it's all about public perception. The only risk we have is what's the public going to think about it? And Andy made a point, and that's a great point. These businesses as prospective businesses are talking about investing millions of dollars into these businesses. If they had huge public support, why aren't they pooling the resources? Where's the signatures? Where's all these hundreds of people that are going to support these businesses? I just don't see them. And I know a lot of people in the village, and I only know a handful that are in support of this. And a lot of them, like Andy said, they're like, well, I don't really care. Why do I care? What's it going to, how it's going to help the village? What's the big deal? It's really, there's really no big upside to it. So another thing, people say, well, where are the businesses at? Where's the businesses knocking on our doors? I hear these gentlemen grumbling about that. Where's the businesses at? Well, I'm on the planning commission, and for the past few months, we've been analyzing our ordinances, and our planning representative from the county has been telling us after every meeting, guys, you're not getting businesses because your ordinances aren't in line. Just to get Dollar General in here, they had to go through tons of variances and the loopholes, and it was a big deal to see a Dollar General. So trying to get manufacturing or any other new businesses built, it's difficult in the village right now. Not because people don't want to be here, because the village is really welcoming with our ordinances and our zoning and stuff like that. So we've got a lot of work to do from our zoning to even if we're going to let marijuana business in here, we've got a ton of zoning work to do for them or any other business. So that's why we're not getting people knocking on our door. We don't have the traffic, like she mentioned, and we're not friendly. Our zoning ordinances are not friendly to businesses right now. So one of my things I'm working on the planning commission is to make it more friendly for businesses and start targeting specific types of businesses for specific properties. And we've got a lot of opportunity there. So that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, is he a resident in here?
Who, man?
Yeah.
Are you a resident?
Yeah.
Good. We're all
I've been here all my
residents
life,
here.
okay?
We're all residents
But,
here. Hold on.
where did he say we had the money for,
Assistant Chief Steiner.
the roads?
Steer. Why do I call you Steer?
State of Village list?
You're gonna be Steer for the rest of the day.
Just a couple of things.
It was-
Hey guys, guys.
Hey,
Just a couple things I'd like to touch on real quick. We talked about police coverage.
right now, so I'll catch you later. I can't come pick you up right now.
We talk about police coverage, but we don't talk about
Yes,
fire
sir.
coverage.
No, I'm not.
We did discuss, I did hear the,
Meeting.
about the water and the sewer.
Bye.
That is a huge concern for us,
Bye.
is to make sure that the central structure has water. Equipment, we don't have the equipment, we don't have the manpower, we don't have, the hazmat, hazardous materials involved in a process facility is great. We are trained in hazmat, we don't have equipment in hazmat. Inspections, most likely that's to be done on a monthly basis. We don't have the staff to be able to, maintain inspections of said buildings. So I just wanted to as a fire aspect, with fire coverage, I would have to go out and say we don't, and we cannot properly provide fire protection for any type of large buildings, hazmat buildings, stuff like that. So I just wanted to do that with you guys, and thank you. Any questions?
what type of equipment would a community need to deal with the chemicals?
Well, if
and
we're talking about, I've heard 80,000 square foot buildings, I've heard, 50,000 square foot, the height, I don't have ladders to reach if there's an HVAC system on the top. I don't have ladders to reach it. We would have to call in mutual aid, which is an extended response. The sheer size of buildings for inspections, we're just, basically manpower is a huge issue. Nobody's full-time here in the village. The chief and myself are here part-time. A lot of accidents tonight, so be careful driving home.
More no comment.
President Gilbert?
Good evening. I just want to take the opportunity to thank this committee. I know I probably put you in a tough situation, but you guys have handled it well. You've done your research. I think when this meeting's over tonight, you're going to give the council some guidance in how the residents feel. And I just want to say thank you for serving. In spite of all the things that you may have been called or said or whatever, when it comes with the territory, a tough job, a tough issue, something that's new to our community, and I just want to say thank you for doing what you've been doing.
Did you? Oh, did you? Okay.
Good evening again. I'd like to thank you as well for listening to us for the last 3.5 meetings with respect to this. I don't expect to change your minds. I'd like you to think of a couple of things. The public perception that you're all concerned about. If I were to stand here and tell you I was going to bring the same plant as an oils and supplement processing plant, would the discussion change? Because that's essentially what we've presented to you. Nobody knows from the outside what this is. The plans that we present, the proposal that we present, is an oil and processing plant and a laboratory. Yes, there is a retail component to it. The downside of not bundling those, obviously there's a huge financial impact. And the proposal is whether or not the business plan works. The other thing is, you don't get to control it at that point. If you allow Lennox Township next door, or allow a dispensary at 27 Mile Road, you don't get to control it anymore. That safety concern that you have becomes more apparent as that project is now a standalone target and a soft target than what we propose to you in a completely secure situation. With respect to the financial aspects, over and above that, I don't know if any of you, if you've watched the news, there's a very large development, which sort of looks a lot like ours, at least when they pitch it. It's Harvest Park in Eaton County. Look it up. The initial project was 63 acres, subdivided. They sold each acre at $149,000 an acre. The surrounding properties will go up. The MLive article on that project, based upon the economics that they provided and independently reviewed, were 1,000 jobs out of phase one. Yes, there hasn't been a lot of development in the city. We have owned that property for a long time. Yes, there's something else we can do with it. But essentially, again, what we're proposing to you looks no different from the outside than a vitamin processing plant that has the ability to do that with a retail component. I've sat through 4 meetings. I've sat through multitudes of meetings with at various city councils. I sit as a council member in the city of Birmingham. Public perception aside, social media aside, is not what you should dictate your decisions on. It's anecdotal, it's one-sided, it isn't what takes place in real life. I'd love to tell you otherwise, but it isn't. I've been involved in lawsuits where people have been cyberbullied on the internet. It's easy to hide behind a computer. It's easy to hide behind your Facebook page. It's not easy to come out and say to any one of you, as a public official, I'm opposed to this. I've sat through 4 meetings. There's been one person that has come before this board that said, we don't like this, we don't want this in the village. Not one. It's because he's a builder, and if he doesn't, he can't rezone stuff.
I'm not a builder.
You said you just said 8 basements to the ground.
Yeah, you sure did, you sure did.
8 basements by my house.
By his house, he lives right behind me.
I live in
My-
Devore Park.
my
I'm an
apologies.
engineer for an automotive company.
Okay.
For Christ's sake.
The one
I
guy shows up and
apologize.
nobody listens to him.
I
Yeah,
live in
right.
Devore Park.
Just some things to consider. In the economics, like I said, we've been here. We're not going anywhere. The property isn't going to change. The zoning's not going to change. The only way you get downtown starting to drive development is if there's other money. My partners and I have a significant proposal in front. If not, there's other places. Just like, and I'm not being heavy-handed. We want to do it here. We're trying to give the village an opportunity. But yes, it takes all 5 licenses. And it takes the fortitude of this commission to say, yeah, we want to be on the forefront. Because on the backside of this isn't the spot to be. There's too many other opportunities, not only in this county, but throughout this state. This state is the 2nd largest in the country of cardholders. 2nd largest. If you don't think that's going to generate income at some point in time for somebody, it's a misguided state. Again, thank you all for your time. Don't expect to change anybody's mind. Consider those things. Thank you.
Came to a meeting just like this about 5 years
Can you
ago.
state your name?
Marilyn Cake. I'm a landowner here. I don't know a thing about marijuana. Came from a generation that knew nothing about it. I don't take any kind of medications, and that's my choice. About 5 years ago, I came to a meeting like this, and someone in the audience got up and said, we don't need a pawn shop. I don't want my kids going up and looking in a pawn shop and seeing somebody pawn something. Well, 5 years have passed, and we've enjoyed having Jack's place down there. He does a service for people when they need a buck. And I think this will do the same thing for the village, because we can't keep going at the rate we're going without development. And that land is not doing anybody any good. And I would ask that you approve, at least approve the things that you were talking about as far as the service building and so on. The other is debatable, it's up to the administration. Thank you.
Call on the floor. Okay, we're going to format a recommendation to council. Suggestions on how we should do this. Should we do it by each individual business and give a yay or nay, or how would you guys like to do this?
Yeah, maybe vote on each of the 5.
Okay.
And then after, if there are any, that.
I only have a question of how that works village-wide, because I only know it from the school board standpoint, but when we have committee meetings, and I meant to ask you this at one of the last meetings, but we can't make decisions and vote on things at a committee meeting in the school board. I assume it's different here, because we actually are tasked to do so.
Yeah, what we're doing is just voting on a recommendation.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, but would you?
Well, you're basically, you are taking a vote. It's gonna be 4-3, 5-2, whatever.
Well, and then
And for or against. My only question is,
Yeah,
I know we're tasked to make a decision and put forth that thing to the village council. I just want to make sure we're not going against any sort of Open Meetings Act liability and issues or anything like that by actually taking a vote, because I know that's what we're supposed to do, and I don't know how you would do it without taking a vote.
you know what?
But I want to make sure we're all.
Why don't we just gather the information for council as a breakdown of preference? You know, we could say we had 3 people for testing, we had 4 people for, and I think council's been doing their homework too. But to see what 7 residents that maybe, and most of you are not on council yet, you know, we could give them an idea of what the residents want. But we could just do it that way, just say 3 people are in favor of dispensaries or 4 people in favor of dispensaries, and they will kind of give an idea of what kind of facilities they could approve. Does that sound okay? Can we think of a better way of doing this?
Do you want to, how do you want to do that? We go around and we say which ones we're in favor of again?
I think we kind of did that.
Can we do, would that be all right?
Yay and nay.
Yay and nay.
Yay and nay.
Just
Yay and
say
nay.
each facility and just say yea or nay on each one.
My other question was, to Mr. Hankey's statement, I wonder if it resonated with anybody else like it did me. You know, I told you before, I was on the fence and I look at these things and I can see positives from this and that and no dispensary, but your statement says it takes all 5 licenses. It takes all 5 licenses for this bill, and you didn't really finish or elaborate on that sentence, but I would assume it's for this facility and this project to really succeed, it would take all 5 licenses. Is that where you're going with that?
The dynamics and economics are.
And I can understand that.
And it protects it.
Sure,
Yeah.
I can understand that. You have it growing there, you process it there, you sell it there. It's all confined to one area.
And it really,
protected.
it does a couple of things that if you start separating them, doesn't happen.
Sure.
Especially Mr. Jouet, who was here from MacuHealth Health. The concept that sort of evolved into this now is the oils and the supplements. And that eventually is where this is going to go. This isn't selling. The economics are such that sooner or later, this is going to that. It's going to the oils. If you don't regulate the product yourself, because there is no regulation right now, it's like the supplements, right? There isn't any. You go to a Better Health store, I do it. You can buy anything you happen to buy. You don't know what's in it.
Right.
It's sort of hit and miss. Frankly, the CBD oils that are out there right now, most of them have fentanyl in them and are out of China. They're diluted. The one gentleman who was not here from our Oregon, one of the Oregon partners that's interested, does nothing but run the CBD oil plant. So that proposal, in order to get that whole piece, is to make sure that you control the product, and the quality of the product, not just the quantity of the product, not just where it goes, but you physically control the quality of the product. That's labor intensive. It takes a lot of people to do it. The equipment's extremely expensive. Just to outfit the processing facility the way we're now looking at it, just the equipment, the fixturing alone is close to $1 million. The engineering's incredible. This isn't, it's a lot harder to make a gelatin supplement than you think. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of money. So from that standpoint, that's the economics of it. Is it's sort of, you need all of the pieces together on a compound. And again, the other thing it does is control the environment. If you move it a mile down, you lose that control. No matter, even if it's in Lennox Township, you lose that control. And that's the safety concern that you don't want. And we don't want it. And frankly, we're not going to invest $8 or $10 million on phase 1 of this project, or phases 1 and 2 of this project, and risk it by having somebody walk through. The dispensaries, the way we've got the security teams in both Dave Curtis, and I sent a letter to Mr. Meissen and Dan that they asked me for with respect to the security concerns is, remember, this is a 3-step process to even get into the place. This isn't walking into any other retail establishment. You have to have a card. You have to go through security. Excuse me, the ID's got to be right. That only gets you the first 3 feet. It doesn't actually get you into the dispensary. So the perceptions of what you're seeing in Ingmar Road or anywhere else where those are is not going to be the case with us. We don't plan to do that. We haven't done that. The partners that are interested in this from Delta One and Paul are, these guys are, there's a lot of money at stake here. I'm not going to, we're not going to risk that. I certainly wouldn't put a proposal before you or any other city commission where I put anybody at risk. Not my family, first and foremost, not my neighbors. So.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. You guys have made a comment on the side that you've reached out to other residents that oppose to this.
Some are in favor of it, some.
When I speak to people, they're either for it or they don't care. So when you're saying you don't care, I'm going to put you on your for it, because by saying you don't care, that's what so you're saying you either like it or you don't. But my question is, what is the main reason why they're saying that they don't want it when they speak to you?
You know what, and it's interesting. It depends on where they live. The people off of Main Street, the older part of the village, they've been through a lot. There's a lot that has happened where a lot of people have just, it's New Haven, let anything happen. They've been through a lot, and they look at the stigma attached to it.
So it's the image.
It's the image, and it is an illegal narcotic.
Pot shop.
Yeah, no, it's an illegal narcotic. A lot of them say, isn't it illegal? Oh, yeah.
So it's the lack of knowledge.
Yeah, it's an illegal drug. Why are we doing illegal drugs? It's a very kind of visceral reaction to it. Some of the younger people that I've talked to said that were not in favor of it said, well, I don't want a bunch of stoners getting stuff out and coming out there and then hitting my kid with a car. Probably not going to happen, but I'm not going to dismiss their opinion. It's valid.
Sure.
You know, but I get different reactions in different parts of the village.
So when I get a reaction, just sitting here throughout the meetings and getting the knowledge, did you educate?
Do I what?
Did you educate? To me, when I took this,
You know
when
what?
I was asked, I took it as, I'm either A or nay. What's the best for the village?
You know what?
So I took in the information, the information. So when I did speak to people that maybe didn't know or didn't care, I gave the knowledge that was shared to me.
Well,
And
for me,
their opinions kind of changed.
yeah, for me, I'm not out there
I'm
to
not
convince
promoting it,
people that
but
their
that's-
opinions
Right.
are worthless.
Right, and that's not what my point was.
Well, but when you say educate somebody,
I
when
meant-
you say,
Well, you're sitting here for how many meetings? We've got how much overload, 83 pages, 15 pages.
Emails,
Excuse me,
yeah.
I'm just
Oh,
here.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm just saying, so
A lot of information.
that's what the committee, in my mindset, was. What is the best for the village?
right,
So they're asking me as somebody on the committee, I'm saying this, and I'm not getting, hey, I'm for it or I'm not for it. I'm saying, well, what do you do on the committee? Well, this is the information that I have received.
Yeah.
Now it's different. I
No, what
think-
I-
and
what I
think
talked to is the money.
The major point that people would point out is, you know, is it Generation X? Oh, it's the gateway drug? Is it the younger people?
I
Everyone's,
think
you know, stoners? No, hold on, let's erase that. Here's your dry erase board. Here's, as someone who sat on the committee through, you know, hours of meetings, what is going on? And here's your pros for the village, and here's our cons. You weigh it out yourself. You live Amherst, you live here, you live there, you live there, and I get that there's people that are gonna be, obviously, it's a 2-mile radius, there's gonna be houses that are by the industrial.
Yeah.
It's inevitable, but right now, it's a vacant land. What is it doing for us now?
Right.
I'm thinking present. So that's why I'm asking, because I heard you make that statement, and he tried to fight that valid point, and I'm going, well, I've heard people who want it. So who are these people, and what are they saying to make my mind go, well, is it just maybe once we get the knowledge out there, just like, hey, I want a dance studio. I gotta give you my knowledge of my dance studio. Or you're just gonna look at me like, oh, those belly dancers, ooh, pole. No, it's an art.
And the old expression,
And I gotta
build it
educate.
and everybody will come.
Right. So I guess from somebody who has to educate people on the art of something, and I'm not trying to persuade their minds on it changing. I'm doing my job as somebody who is on the committee.
Well, this process, this conversation's been going on for over a year.
Yeah, I understand.
Long
And
before-
I'm only been here since November, I get it.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Long before a committee was formed,
Right.
and we've had village workshops on it long before the committee was formed. It's not up to me to tell people, well, you're wrong.
Right.
This is,
You're absolutely right.
what I did was say, hey, you know, there's something coming up, what do you guys think about this? Well, it would mean another business coming to town.
Right.
And it would mean, you know, we would get the rent. The only good that it's gonna do the village is tax money. Okay, and if we don't allow, you know, the financial bottom line, we get 100 and maybe 10 if we don't allow one of the businesses, 20%, I can't do math this late at night. But I told people, you know, it would be a new building. It would be more jobs.
So you did your job with the committee.
Well, that was just even before the committee meeting.
Right.
But the feedback, pushback that I got from a lot of residents, they were angry. They were angry about it. Now, I've had some residents say, hey, you know what, it's another business. And we could get, you know, tax money from it. And, well, you know, if it's tucked away over by the scrapyard, you know, which was a more recent conversation. But I don't believe that, I'm not going to tell people your opinion is valid.
Right.
And I'm not going to argue with them and say, well, no, this, and this. You're entitled to your opinion, and anybody that argues with you and tells you you are not entitled to your opinion offends me. That would offend me. If I had an opinion and somebody said, well, you're wrong, and your opinion isn't valid, it's offensive. And I'm not about to, pardon my French, piss people off. I just wanted, hey, everybody knows what marijuana is. I mean, if you don't, you're in a cave somewhere. And some people have very strong opinions. Some people are in the neutral zone and say, well, they legalized it out in Colorado, and, you know. So they're on the fence. And then there are some people that say, hey, the more the merrier. So I'm not about to tell them they're wrong. And I'm not about to try to persuade them that pot is the future. And pot is going to give us brand new restaurants, and people are going to flock to New Haven because they've got marijuana businesses in New Haven.
No, you'd be putting a lot of people out of business.
Well, I think there's
Because
three.
there's a lot of drugs all over the place.
No, but I think
And
there's
it's not
three.
doing anything.
All right, Marilyn, excuse me.
I think she was just trying to make a valid point.
Yeah, no, that is a very valid point. But I started talking to people like a year ago
Yeah.
when the first attorney showed up. And I thought, oh, gonna bet this is gonna blossom into something different. So, no, I've been talking to people for a while, but it's amazing though, it's kind of like the neighborhoods. Different neighborhoods have different opinions, which is, with residents in Pembroke, for some reason, one of the residents in Pembroke thought the facility was gonna go in the industrial area right behind Pembroke, and they were not happy about that. I said, no, as far as I know, there's been no conversation about
But
that.
these are the same folks that have the opportunity as of tonight, even though the weather, to come up here and
You know what I'm getting? And
find these things out themselves, right?
I've been trying to get people here
Yeah.
for one way or another. You know what they're telling me?
And I appreciate Brian posting it on Facebook.
Yeah, and thank you.
That just shows they don't care.
Thank
you
you.
know?
No, they're assuming you people aren't gonna do this, are you? That's what I got. Well, this isn't gonna happen. I said, no, of course not. And
I
then
was
all
just
of
trying
that-
to make a point that everybody, and I think Daniel pointed it out, is they know you're opposed to it.
Yeah.
So they're gonna come to you, and those that know maybe that I'm not gonna say yes or no to them, I'm gonna hear both. And honestly, I've heard no one say they were opposed to it. They know Daniel is for it, so those that are for it are gonna lean on Daniel. I think that was just kind of, as for me, as somebody who appreciate being on this committee, wanted to point out was, you had to come with a clean slate. Everybody said there's no doubt that there's no medical benefits to it, but the bottom line was the village that I'm growing to love, and that's what I'm here, and that we need to vote on the 5, and I appreciate everybody who did come out and, voice their opinion. It does mean something to us, it really does. So, and that's all I was trying to point out.
I've got one thing I want to say though. I don't think with the opportunity that we're going to get with this is going to be the best thing that this village is ever going to have, because I don't think anybody else will be coming into this village and will be investing as much as any other kind of business. You may get a Dollar General, you may get a few houses, but something on this magnitude of a corporation, I don't think this village should be able to really want to turn this down. I mean, if you really had a lot of people that were concerned about it, they're up in arms, where have these people been the last 5 meetings? No one's ever showed up. If they were that concerned. I just don't, I would like to see the village take up an offer like what's been presented to us. Because,
Well,
like I said, we might
Take
not
up
even
an
get another offer.
or learn like what was presented to us.
And what was presented, I was
Well,
very
I
amazed by it.
understand even if council approves, certain facilities, if you issue permits, you have people, different companies will apply for those permits. You do your background checks, there's a whole process involved. It's not like we're planning to approve this for one agency or one company. There's a whole process involved there. So, we could end up saying, well, no, we don't want A, but B, nice guy, we want, he's a local guy, we want to give it to him. He's only proposing a $4 million facility. So if you do the math, that's what, $60,000 in tax revenue. So we're not here to recommend to council that they give a permit to company A. We're here whether or not we want to permit the facility, then figure out the zoning, then figure out our caveats that we want. So it's a long drawn out process, so, but why don't we get to, because it's getting late, and I know the snow's probably
Can I
accumulating.
just
a bit.
interject?
Yeah,
Just one thing. Well, it's gonna be multiple things, sorry. But, so, kind of on that point that you're making, Mr. Hinkie just mentioned that it's all or nothing, 5 or probably nothing. So a lot of, I think, the conversations that have been happening on this committee have been, the proposal from Delta One sounds great. The proposal and the renderings that we've seen look fantastic. So when I mentioned in my comments, there's, even I was taken aback by those renderings that, wow, this looks amazing. Why wouldn't we do it? And I throughout this whole process, went back and forth. I've never made a comment on Facebook. I told my friends I will never make a comment on Facebook about this, because all it does is potentially stir up debate that you can't put context around, and that's just not me. So I wanted to take my time, much like you did, Heather, to understand what are all the pieces of information that are coming in. The presentation, Dan, that you made had a lot of great points in it. So taking all that information kind of got me to my point of where I am. I think it's something to consider, though, if knowing all of that, knowing what Delta One is proposing, knowing what Mr. Henke has said tonight, if the committee goes forward and says, well, we don't want a dispensary, well, then that might mean that those great renderings that we saw, that great proposal that we saw, is now out of play. And knowing that that could potentially be out of play, and now we're stuck in the unknown of what would the process be in terms of what would come in. Do we still feel potentially as strongly that we should allow it? And it kind of throws us back into the unknown. I think, Daniel, you made great points in terms of you control a lot of that via ordinance, and I agree with you. You would control, a lot of that via ordinance, but it would throw you sort of back, into that position of, we think it's a great business opportunity, but we really don't know, what would be coming, and where it would be going. We know, there's some certainty of, what's been proposed, and I think that's kind of appealing at this point. But like Ann said, there's no guarantee that, any individual organization will get licensed. There's no guarantee that, a business plan will fall apart and decide that, well, that's not quite as good of an idea. Now we have a, plot of land over here that seems more amenable to this type of facility, so let's go there instead. So it throws in a lot of unknown entities, I believe.
Okay, so let's go through the facilities, and we'll get a head count on all 5.
No, I mean like one by one.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I think I'd be more comfortable telling the rest of council, well, 4 people thought this was a good idea, 3 people thought this was a good idea. Because, we could take a vote, but it's just a recommendation. So, okay, let's go through the facilities.
This whole purpose was to make a recommendation.
Yeah,
That's what we're doing.
that's what we're doing.
To make a recommendation.
Okay, so let's, what were the 5 different facilities, proper terminology?
Grower, safety compliance,
But safety compliance, and that entails,
safety compliance is testing for tetrahydrochloride with THC and also impurities.
testing. Okay, and the next facility,
Grow.
is it called grow?
Grow operation, is that what it
It's
is?
just grow facility.
Oh, is it?
Grow facility.
Grower, I think.
Grower.
Grower.
And the next one,
Secure transport.
Secure transport.
secure transport, dispensary,
Provision center is the term.
Provision.
provisioning centers, okay. I know what they are, but I don't know. Provisioning centers. And secure transport.
Did you do processing?
No. Okay, safety compliance testing. Let's just go around the table, yes or no?
No.
Okay, so that's, and I'm not gonna put down who voted what, I'm just gonna say there's a no vote. Mr. Smith? On safety compliance testing facility, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Dan?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
No.
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 No. So now we know. Okay, the grow facility. Right?
No.
No.
Yes.
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 No.
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 No. And no. On the provisioning center?
No.
No.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay,
No.
No.
and no. On the secure transport,
We already did that.
or did we do secure? No, we did
Oh, no.
safety compliance.
No.
Do not confuse me.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
and yes.
No.
No.
No, and no. And processing facility? Processing?
No.
No.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
and yes.
No.
No? No, and no. Okay, we have the recommendation to council. And again, I want to thank you guys. I know this wasn't easy, carving out the time for all this. I really appreciate your patience, your information. We had a call, oh, we're calling from a table. Call from the table. I forgot about that. Call from the table.
No, I guess I'll speak up real quick. You know, I was saying, you know, in the beginning, I was a proponent for the 4 of the 5. I want to thank everybody who came and talked and gave their opinion. I think some of the things that really hit me, Assistant Chief Mr. Steer, really appreciate. What?
Steer.
It is Steer, right? You guys got me all screwed up now. You know, I appreciate your comments. You know, I think that actually was an oversight of our committee, that we were so focused on police, we didn't think about fire. And, you know, your comments about it being something that we don't have the ability to serve, that really weighs heavily on me. You know, I just want to thank everybody, though. I know at the end, not everybody is going to be happy. We're going to, you know, pick some people off. We're going to make some people happy. Mr. Henke and Delta One Group and everybody, you know, I can't thank you guys enough. Your presentation was excellent. The 5-0 kind of did it for me, though.
I'm not saying it is 5-0, but if the opportunity is, the numbers change, Brian, that's the issue. It's not that we can't do it, we have to go back and reevaluate what part of the project has to be downsized. So maybe it's $4 million. But
do you guys ever want to see this village of New Haven grow?
the numbers do change.
Houses, that's all.
What else do you need?
But-
That is it. You need businesses.
Okay, wait, we had called from the.
Could I finish, guys? Thanks.
How many years you been here?
What's that matter?
I can't tell you to change your vote, but don't necessarily foreclose the other 4, just because my business numbers work on 4 of the 5. It's not to say if the trustees as a whole, if the commission as a whole decides to opt in, that we're not still here.
Right.
We're just giving the information to council.
I get, that's what I understand.
Yeah.
But all I said was, Brian's recommendation was, because it was all or nothing, as I understand him, that's why he asked the question. I don't want that perception to be, this is necessarily an all or nothing. It changes the business dynamic for us. That's the thing.
Sure.
So I don't know if that changes your yeses to me, or your no's to maybe on the other 4.
No, unfortunately it doesn't.
Okay.
Thank you.
Man.
Then I can't help it.
I know.
Anybody else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm very much.
Matters, man.
The fact that I